The apostle tells us today that this is the commandment. This is my commandment to you, that you believe in the name of Jesus Christ and that you love one another. You believe in the name of Jesus Christ. That's a commandment. Now, usually when you think of commandments, at least I do, you think, oh, I know the 10 Commandments, don't steal and don't take the Lord's name in vain. These are all commandments, things you do and can do. But when you command faith, that sounds a little odd to me, doesn't it? To you, it's kind of like faith. You either have it or you don't. But no, the apostle says you must believe. That's a commandment that you must believe. So how do we approach this today? Well, I came up with an illustration that's not usual to hear over the pulpit today. And if you don't like it, you can blame C.S. Lewis, because he's the one that sort of gave me the idea this week. I was thinking about the sermon, and that is believing in Jesus is kind of like playing poker with God. Oh my goodness. You say, oh, Jesus. I was a Baptist, okay? And just to give you a little background on this whole thing, we were not allowed to have face cards in our house. And so one of my gravest sins growing up in high school was that I bought a deck of face cards, and I smuggled it into my house, and I hid it behind the books in my bookcase, and I learned to play poker in high school during the lunchtime in the cafeteria. Never told my folks that, even to this day. But we're all Catholics here, and I know a lot of you play poker, right? So this should not be a hard thing for you today to hear. Yeah, playing poker with Jesus, sitting across the table with Jesus is kind of like what we're talking about here today. Okay, and as you can imagine, it's hard to beat Jesus at poker. He's really good. He's got a lot of cards that he lays on the table, okay? Royal flushes, whatever, one card would be this, he lays on a table, and they're all very specific things that believing in the name of Jesus brings us into, okay? Very specific things. And that's a challenge. One card he lays down is that, John, I am the pre-existent Logos that dwelt with the Father before all ages. Whoa. Do I really believe that? Another card is, I became incarnate through the Virgin Mary and became man. And so you and I have a lot in common, our humanity. Do you really believe in my humanity, John? Okay. I believe that. I am the historical Christ, but I'm also the pre-incarnate Logos. Well, how do these things go together, Jesus? I don't know, Jesus has another card. And that is, I am now resurrected and seated at the right hand of God the Father. And I said, well, Jesus, you're sitting across the table from me. How in the world can you do all this at the same time? Whoa. John, I'm the Eucharistic Christ. I become the bread, I become the wine, or the wine and becomes my blood, and the bread is my flesh. But Jesus, how could this be? How can you be all these things? So, when you're playing poker with God, so to speak, you're forced to believe in very specific things. They're not vague things. They're doctrines that are very specific. And when you look at them and you're being honest about it, sometimes you just feel like folding, don't you? How in the world can I do all this? How can I play poker with God? And Jesus says, okay, let's go over again. Okay, let's start over again. And the important thing is that you play back and forth with him. And it's a relational thing. Dear brothers and sisters, too many of us are not playing poker with Jesus. We are playing solitaire. And in solitaire, it's very safe. We can have a vague idea of God and Jesus, and that's okay to us because it sort of lets us feel like we're in control. We're playing solitaire. But the problem with solitaire is that it's solitaire. It's not relational. I don't know anything about solitaire. Every once in a while, I'll watch look over my wife's shoulder, and she's playing solitaire on her, and she's really good at it, you know. But what do you win at the end, right? Go back to the table with Jesus, and you'll find that when you start engaging your mind, your intellect, your imagination, your will, and all the good and wonderful things that are inside our interior with the very specific things that is commanded of us to believe, we start growing. And we start getting a little bit better at poker, and then, you know, Jesus and you start, you know, having a good time with this whole thing. And what happens is this. We find that we are converted. Our belief in taking these doctrines seriously it converts us. And we find that we're loving our neighbor as is commanded to us by the apostle today. And not only loving your neighbor, but as we get into the Gospels, we realize that bearing fruit happens when you play poker with Jesus. Yes, bearing fruit, much fruit. And it's kind of like this, dear brothers and sisters. Again, I want to lay the challenge before you today. Where are you in your faith? Are you playing solitaire? Just sort of hoping and thinking that, oh, maybe these things are true, maybe they're not. But that's not faith, dear brothers and sisters. And you can never win anything by playing solitaire. But when you play with Jesus, you get better at it. And after a while, you might win a few hands. And as you're winning a few hands, you know, what Jesus likes more than anything else is for you just to win the house and go home with the whole board. Because then you're bearing much fruit, and then his Father is glorified. Now, I have no idea how you're going to take this sermon. I have no idea where you're at. But I hope that you get the idea that we have to engage ourselves with these very specific truths about Jesus Christ. And when we do, as we're commanded, and you can do this, because it's commanded of us, we can change the world around us, we'll bear much fruit, and then what does this gospel say? We will be true disciples of Jesus Christ. And that's what you and I are made for.